And going back to the clay tubes brush, I'm just going to continue sketching form into the rest of the neck and the torso here. And I'm going to use the Transpose Mask, which is the Control, Shift, Click, and Drag while in Move mode. I'm going to leave Draw mode, go to Move mode, hold down the Control key, and then just click and drag, and it'll mask along the topology of the neck. And I will stretch that neck out a bit. And I'm going to experiment with rotating that forward. And give just a quick idea of hunching those shoulders a bit. I think I might try and bring these up. Bring the trapezius up. Add a bit of a hunch to this character. That transpose masking is covered in the section on posing with the Transpose Brush. It's a pretty simple tool. I'll come back to it in just a moment and give you a rundown on it. So the way that Transpose tool works is if I go into Move mode up here, it gives me this transpose line. I've got X symmetry turned on right now. If I click and drag, it draws the line from whatever central point I clicked on. I'm going to turn off X symmetry. If I click in the middle, it moves. If I click in the outside, it sort of shears. If I alt click, it does the same thing with a fall off. Now this also has a rotation as well. Let me turn my X symmetry back on. There we go. This also has a rotation if I click and drag. Click and drag on the outside, it rotates around that center point where I dragged it. If I hold down hold down Alt, it does the same thing with a fall off. And then there's scale, which is exactly what you would expect. If you hold down the Alt key, it also scales with a fall off. If I control, click, and drag, it'll mask along the topology of the figure. So then I can draw my transpose line and let's say rotate, and it won't affect those masked portions. Turn my X symmetry back on. There's more information on transpose posing and the transpose tools on other videos on the DVD, as well as in the text of the book. I'm just experimenting with different shapes to the jaw right now. I actually prefer that jaw a little bit more acute in its angle. I'm still not convinced by those eyes where I've got them placed. I want to try and bring them up even further. And going back to the clay tubes brush and just building up the form of the head. I'm going to go ahead and save my work at this point. Now at this stage I'm taking the move brush and adjusting the shape of the temporal ridge and the top of the head. The idea is I just want to start working the bone structure here using the move brush, pulling out the profile. And as I pull out the profile, I'll also pull out the brow ridge and the cheekbones, just to make sure that the bone structure of the face stays consistent. And I'm following the general structure of a human skull, but I'm imposing that onto what is, an alien or, a fantasy character. Using the clay tubes brush now with no alpha enabled, and you'll see me do this a lot, to build up the shape of the skull, and then come down here and build up the temporal ridge and the temporalis muscle, the masses at the side of the head there. And then I'm coming down the center and the nasal bridge. And I'm going to actually build up a bit of the nose here as well. I don't quite know where the nose is going yet. At this stage in the sculpture, I'm still sketching the nose. I'm still trying to get an idea of what that's going to look like. So you'll see me play with a couple options before it really dials in. And here, using the move brush at the corners of the mouth and bringing the cheekbones forward again. The cheekbone forms the bottom part of the eye socket, which cradles the sphere of the eyeball. So I want to make sure that it's sitting out far enough that it can actually cradle that sphere. It can actually hold the eyeball in place. I don't want the cheekbone too far back. It's a common kind of error. It doesn't really look very good when the cheekbone sits too far back. I have pulled it rather far forward here, which is adding to that leonine kind of cat-like quality to the face right now. I'm building up the jawline and the masseter muscle here, that big jaw muscle. Big jaw muscles, big masseters, instinctually communicate dangerous predator to us because big bone-crushing jaws have big masseter muscles. And if you look at, on my desk I have the skull of a pit bull. It's a casting of a skull of a pit bull, and it's got a huge masseter muscle, or a huge area that the masseter muscle will attach to. You'll see it on big cats as well. Any large, powerful predator, you're going to find that masseter muscle is going to be really huge. So if you can bring that in, you'll be able to communicate subconsciously that this thing is dangerous. Working the jawline again, bringing that chin forward and bringing the jawline out. And then using those polygroups to isolate the lower jaw. And at this stage I'm experimenting with some different options with the lips, what it looks like with an underbite or an overbite. Because mouths are really just as versatile as eyes when it comes to expressing the state of mind of a character. If you just tweak the mouth a little bit, you can really change the character a lot. So I take a lot of time to sort of experiment here and see what his mouth could look like. Even before we start roughing the lips in, I just want to get a general idea of the gesture of the mouth, how it flows. There I'm playing with the distance between the mouth and the nose. Because nothing's really set yet. I haven't decided much about this character. I'm sort of looking for interesting shapes as I go, which is a very fun way of sculpting. You're not working to any brief, you're not working to any existing sketch or drawing or plan. You're just looking for cool shapes. And here I'm using the standard brush to sketch in the flow of flesh, where I can find some folds of skin and maybe some striations in muscle. Here you'll see me sketching in the pectoralis muscle, as well as some of the anatomy of the neck here, just pulling out shadow really. I'm just popping in little areas of shadow to define where the flow of the musculature of the neck would be. Because you don't have to sculpt every muscle too. Sometimes you can just catch a shadow in a certain area around a muscle and it will communicate that it's there. Because very rarely is every muscle completely outlined with shadow at all times. It just doesn't look natural. And again, I'm using the move brush to change the shape of the profile of the skull. And then widening the neck a bit. It's really about playing right now. I'm really playing with the shapes and playing with the forms. Using that clay tubes brush again with no alpha to build up the shape of the skull here. It's really a brush that I've started to a brush combination that I've started to use quite a lot, because it seems to me that it builds up form in a really nice way, and it also allows me to create planes like I'm doing right here. Holding the Alt key down, I'm able to knock back planes in the cheekbone there. There I've masked out the lip and I've built up the nasolabial fold, and all this is being done just with that clay tubes brush. Clay tubes with no alpha. You can do quite a bit with that brush, and you can do it quickly. You don't have to change brushes very much. You can just go in and dial in shapes really fast and then start to refine them without even changing your brush. Building up some shapes here in the forehead, kind of a knuckled brow. Now here I'm revisiting the configuration of that eye socket. I want to make sure that that feels structurally sound. I don't want it to be sitting too far back that it just doesn't seem natural. Here just playing around with different proportional changes between the relationships between the features. It's another area where just the slightest little tweak can make all the difference in the world. And raising the ears up. Raising the ears is going to have the effect of making the top of the head seem a little bit smaller, and it's also going to give it a bit more of an animalistic look. Probably compounding that sort of leonine effect by raising the ears. It's going to sort of drive home that feline quality. The ears are pretty small right now, but those will get bigger. I'm really just defining those cheekbones and coming back to the back of the skull here and defining the muscles of the back of the neck, the occipital ridge of the skull. And reaffirming the sternomastoid muscles. You can see right now the neck feels very short. We will actually lengthen the neck in a little bit. It doesn't feel very graceful with that short neck, and I do want this character to have a certain graceful quality to it, especially when we get those big sweeping horns coming out of his head. And you can really see the structure of the eye socket starting to come through now. It's a very defined form there. I'm masking out the interior where the eyes themselves are, and I'm going to rotate those now using the Transpose Rotate. And that's going to even further throw off the perception of that eye. It's going to make it seem even more uncanny by turning it like that, and it gives us an opportunity to really push the character in the eye and make it something unique. It's also, you notice, giving it more of an aggressive quality right now. And back to the clay tubes brush. You notice it fills into the recessed areas first, so it's a nice way to knock back shadow in some of those recessed areas without completely destroying that form. Now switching back to the Move brush and further tweaking the profile. Thinking really just about the outline here from the side view.